there are many emerging treatment options that are really pretty exciting in follicular lymphoma. As we've discussed, the readily available treatments are chemoimmunotherapy, lenalidomide, PI3 kinase inhibitors, and radioimmunotherapy. So those are, right now, that's what's available. The ongoing SWOG trial isn't changing that list. It is designed to help us answer the question of whether there's a best choice among that list. And so that's the SWOG trial. And maybe I won't discuss that, any further, because it just is really sort of helping us choose for the early relapsers between chemoimmunotherapy, the PI3 kinase inhibitor, and lenalidomide. Other novel agents on the horizon are important. One is polatuzumab. So polatuzumab is an anti-CD79B antibody drug conjugate. The drug is MMAE. It's the same drug that is linked in brentuximab vedotin that's used in Hodgkin lymphoma. And polatuzumab is FDA approved now for patients with relapsed diffuse large B-cell lymphoma. But we also know from the early studies that it has activity in follicular lymphoma when given in combination with either rituximab or obinutuzumab. So at ASH in 2019, Dr. Catherine Diefenbach presented results of a phase 1/2 trial in which patients were treated with POLA plus obinutuzumab plus lenalidomide, so a triplet combination. And the results were really interesting. The overall response rate was 80%. The complete remission rate was about 60%, which is pretty high. As I mentioned earlier, we think the complete remission rate with lenalidomide Ritux or lenalidomide obin is probably in the 40s. And so certainly this triplet combination would look to be even better than what one gets with a doublet with lenalidomide. And so I think there was a lot of promise. The peripheral neuropathy that we know can happen with POLA was not too burdensome in this trial. There was no grade 3 or 4 toxicity reported. And so I think the conclusions from this presentation are that it's a promising triplet combination that could be considered for relapsed follicular lymphoma patients. I don't think it's ready for prime time, and I think it needs a randomized trial comparing a triplet with a doublet to see if it really can lead to improved outcomes for patients. So that's probably going to be the next step, I would think, for polatuzumab in follicular lymphoma. Another agent that has a lot of potential on the horizon is tazemetostat. So as we previously mentioned, the gene EZH2 is involved in germinal center development, and EZH2 is an important gene in follicular lymphoma. It's part of the M7 FLIPI. Mutations in EZH2 occur in about 20% of patients with follicular lymphoma, and EZH2 can be overexpressed in follicular lymphoma. So tazemetostat is an orally administered inhibitor of EZH2. It inhibits both the mutated EZH2 and the wild type or non-mutated form of EZH2. And so Epizyme, the sponsor that owns tazemetostat, developed this drug and led a trial. It was a phase 2 trial where they treated 45 patients who had mutated EZH2 and 45 patients who had wild type EZH2. And the results were impressive. First of all, in terms of safety, it was a very well-tolerated drug with very few serious side effects. Grade 3 and 4 side effects were rare. Again, it's taken orally. And in the mutated patients, the overall response rate was about 70%. But if you look at the waterfall plots, almost every single patient had at least some reduction in their disease burden. The unmutated patients or the wild type patients, the results were a little bit less impressive. That is, the overall response rate was only about a third. But again, on the waterfall plots, roughly 2/3 of patients did seem to have some shrinkage of their disease. The mutated patients were less heavily pretreated than the wild type patients. That is, mutated patients had received a median of only 2 prior therapies, whereas the wild type patients had received a median of 3 prior therapies, and many of those patients were on 4th, 5th line therapy. So by that, the fact of that is that the wild type patients were destined to do a little worse than the mutated patients, and that may partially explain some of the difference in results that we're seeing in those two groups. And so my understanding is that tazemetostat is in front of the FDA right now, which is considering whether to approve it for patients with relapse disease. We'll see. So that's a promising drug on the horizon. And then I would say, CAR T-cell therapy looks really effective in follicular lymphoma. This has been reported by Dr. Schuster in the New England Journal with the Novartis product, Kymriah, and it's been reported in Blood Journal with the Juno product, JCAR17. And so I'm not familiar with every CAR T trial, but certainly highly effective treatment in patients with relapsed follicular lymphoma, multiply relapsed 4th, 5th line type therapy patients. Again, it's expensive, it's toxic, so it's certainly not going to be for everyone with relapsed follicular lymphoma, but a highly effective treatment modality. The other modality that I think is really promising in relapsed follicular lymphoma is bispecific antibodies that target both CD3 and CD20. There were several presented at ASH, one called mosunetuzumab, one called a DuoBody, and one called REGN1979 from Regeneron. And so all of these have a high rate of efficacy in patients with relapsed follicular lymphoma. Most of them were pretty early results, so I don't think they're ready for sort of routine clinical use, and none of them is commercially available right now, but I would keep my eyes on those for future research because those look to be effective enough so far that they may become available in the future for relapsed follicular lymphoma.